Hi all. Thank you for joining us today for our discussion on business growth in Africa, leveraging cross-border payment solutions. We'll be covering a variety of topics, ranging from mitigating FX risk to best practices around managing a multi-currency treasury function, and a whole host of things in between. There'll be 10 minutes at the end for Q&A, so make sure to submit your questions via the Q&A function throughout the discussion. I'm joined by our wonderful panelists, who I'd like to thank for taking their time out of their busy schedules. If you could please introduce yourselves, starting with Ovier, then Murat, and then Anthony.
Thanks for the intro, Oscar. So I'm Ovier. I head up the growth and marketing function here at Verto, and quite a pertinent topic that we're discussing today, because part of my role is to figure out how we go into new markets, acquire new customers, and try to grow our business. So payments, as well as sort of teams, organizational structure, communication is super important to what we do from a marketing standpoint.
Thanks, Ovier. And Murat?
Hi to Oscar, hi all participants. I'm a business person, age 56, living in Norway, third generation in international business and logistics. And Sub-Saharan Africa has been one of my passions over close to 30 years. And I think today I'll be presenting kind of a case study, what we have been doing and our cooperation with Verto.
Great, thanks, Murat. And Anthony?
Thanks, Oscar. I'm Anthony. I'm one of the co-founders of Verto today. I'm responsible for products, technology, marketing, and growth. So everything to do with how do we expand, how do we build the right products, how do we localize those products in those markets. That's pretty much my bread and butter, and obviously to make sure that it does work. And it's similar when it comes to customer experience as well.
Great, thank you all. I hope that provides a clearer picture for our attendees. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Businesses everywhere are facing a combination of domestic recessions, rising interest rates, high inflation, and geopolitical uncertainty. The incidence of so many volatile conditions at once makes the current economic conjuncture particularly straining for business, both in emerging and established economies. While pandemic-induced supply chain disruption has eased, COVID-19's economic aftershocks have persisted. Add to this the first war in Europe in decades and its resulting energy crisis, and it is clear that businesses find themselves in a perfect storm of economic headwinds. Despite a volatile cocktail of macroeconomic and political conditions, most businesses still have ambitious growth plans for 2023. Of more than 2,000 mid-market firms across 14 different markets in late 2022, 93% said they are targeting growth in 2023. Indeed, 76% expected double-digit growth next year. Seeing recession at home, smart businesses are looking to export to foreign markets that continue to grow and are sourcing supplies from markets where price rises are less pronounced. So to kick things off, Anthony, which macro trends are the most important to keep an eye on in your opinion, and what role does expansion to new markets play in your growth objectives?
Thanks, Oscar. I think before maybe jump into that, I'll probably define what macro trends means to a company like Verto. So these are what you probably call the broad long-term trends that will affect either your global outlook or how you operate. So things like globalization, technological advancements, environmental concerns, and so on. So when expansion into a new market can be a key growth strategy for businesses looking to tap into new customer base, increase revenues, and diversify their operations. However, it is important for businesses to actually conduct thorough market research and analysis to ensure that they have a solid understanding of this new market culture. So for us as a company, when we try to expand to new markets, we don't just think, oh, let's copy and paste what works in one country to another country, because every country have their own nuances, from things like investment in infrastructure to talent acquisition to regulatory to marketing. There's a lot of things that you have to consider. So when it comes to what are the macro trends that we looked out for, we want to make sure that anything that we're doing from point of view of being from the point of view of actually being successful on the ground, different country, different expansion will require different efforts. So you have to do a lot of work from actually doing the real piece of work on the ground, even finding out what your competitions are doing. And those competitions could be local competitions, not someone that's coming from outside trying to solve the same problem, and trying to understand what they do well and learn from that, and then potentially piggyback on what they don't do really well and use that as your own edge in those markets. And that's what how we kind of go about when it comes to market expansion of Verto. And I think the same can be applied to a few companies, or the same strategy can apply to a few companies.
Thanks, Anthony. Olivier, would you agree largely with the idea that we should be focusing on that, not just macro trends, but also there's lots of different factors to take into account when we expand to markets, and more broadly, which macro trends are the most important to keep an eye on in your opinion? You're muted. Sorry.
I believe you've touched on, yourself and Anthony have touched on some of the critical ones. I think we live in very unprecedented times. I'm probably one of the fortunate or unfortunate generations to witness 2 recessions, or what's looking like a second recession in one lifetime. High interest rates, high inflation, all of that naturally leads to reduced consumer expenditure. So from a business standpoint, if you just look at what macro business tends to do, it's how can we reduce costs so we can still protect our margins and still remain profitable and sustainable as a business. That's one strategy, but naturally that's not going to drive growth for a business. So to drive growth, typically businesses will look at 2 key areas. One is, how do I find new market segments? But new market segments also means incremental cost, because whatever existing products you had before, you have to adapt it to this new segment, which will incur cost in of itself. So if your cost cutting is your primary concern, that's typically not the strategy you're going to go for first, except you've got cash in the bank. Secondly, you look at sort of new geographies. So if you're a tech business, there's no cost for you, or less cost for you going into new markets. So that's a simple and quick way for you to drive growth, despite the sort of macro trends that are going on. And secondly, if it's a physical actual product, what you're really incurring is actually supply chain costs, which potentially can be reduced by either partnering or by actually sort of feeding that into the cost per unit that actually goes into these new markets that you're going into. So there are ways that you can mitigate those risks, but going into new markets is probably one of the cheaper ways of mitigating that.
And so, expanding to new markets should really be the core focus for most businesses, especially tech. So one of the key takeaways from Davos 2023 was a ringing endorsement that emerging markets could hold the key for growth in the face of these macroeconomic storms. As business leaders who are actively driving user growth in emerging markets, Murat, what are some key considerations for market expansion, particularly as it relates to emerging markets?
I can mention you about our case, actually. Norway is, as of this year, the biggest seafood exporter in the world. Until recently, it was the second after China. And at the moment, Norway is the biggest seafood exporter. And we have taken a position to make the nutrition-rich Norwegian seafood available in the markets, which is where there is traditionally it's not available. Norwegian seafood industry has been vertically integrated very well, and they trace the fish up to the end point. When I say end point, to the restaurant, to the hotel, to the supermarket. So kind of each fish has a passport that the traceability is critical. And the vertical integration globally in all developed markets has been already done. So if you go to Asia, US, city by city, district by district, restaurant by restaurant, they can tell you what product is going, what is consumed. Whereas that was the target for our company. We wanted to identify the countries where there is more or less no presence. and some specific products like salmon, which we concentrated. Sub-Saharan Africa, due to several reasons, there was no presence. Like, for example, Nigeria. When we started, it was more or less no stable supply. Some restaurants, time to time, through DHL, buy with personal efforts, tremendous costs, trying to bring. Whereas in HoReCa market, especially, sustainability is crucial. And in this business, there are some key components, and only one of it is the product, the fish. Logistics is something critical in the value chain. And there's something very critical, as much as the fish, that you have to collect the money and assure that you transfer it back home to the fisherman, to the person on the boat. It has to, I mean, the circle has to move. And it is not easy. There are several variables, there are several uncontrolled elements. And also something that to note, fish is a commodity. There's a price fluctuation weekly, daily, even during the day. And the logistics also for the freight, both on the fresh, on the air, or on the vessels, that's also fluctuating. And coming to downstream to the market, there is the FX fluctuation, the devaluation or valuation, non-stop volatility. So there, the control on the finance also as important as having the correct product or having the correct logistics the chain management. So since we started, that has been one of our main challenge, the collection, conversion, transfer, and it has to be prompt daily. In one side, fish is a product which is traded on cash. It is daily. It's a very volatile market, and you have to. So every day counts on the collection, conversion, transfer. So, yeah, just to give you the background of how our concentration came to the markets that we are active and the markets that we are cooperating with Verto is we identified a potential of and identified the challenges. And when we first started, actually, the experts on this end in Norway told it doesn't happen, it doesn't work. Don't lose your resources. Don't spend your time, resources. And then earlier I have developed other personally other distribution, market penetration. So I had kind of an expertise. So one by one we have identified the problems, and one by one we have solved. And we started with let's say in Nigeria. We are in several. We are in Zimbabwe. We are in Zambia. We are in sub-Saharan Africa. We have stable growth, and in each country, local to the kitchen, to the table, actually. So, yep, we started with one box of product in Nigeria, and now we have weekly, stable for several years, non-stop, unsustainable. When the restaurant much to my storage, so from months ahead they can even sell on their menus, they can sell on their offerings to the events our products, knowing that we will bring it on time, and thanks to the clients that are paying on time, that we can plan and do a forecast of financial structuring, where Verto became one of the critical points. So actually today is our holiday. I'm in the mountain. We have guests at home, but I really believe success is important. Companies like Verto sustain for the value chain, for the business to sustain. Yeah.
Murat,
I hope I gave.
just a bit. Sorry, I think you're cutting out there. The
Oscar,
internet
is there?
connection's a
No,
bit
I can't see.
wavy, but
Oscar?
yeah, sorry, yeah. So the internet connection was a bit unclear there, but so yeah, you emphasize the fact that a critical aspect of to drive user growth in emerging markets is the importance of logistics, which is even more important in emerging markets versus developed markets, and having a proper payment infrastructure, which is so much more complicated to have in place. So Anthony, so you've selected markets, you've decided on your go-to market strategy, and you're now acquiring customers. You've done the risk analysis, you've thought about everything. What would you say is the importance of having a local account specifically as part of the payment infrastructure in helping businesses efficiently run their local operations?
Yeah, I think similar to what Murat is trying to explain. So local accounts play a critical role in helping businesses efficiently run their local operations by providing what we call a deep understanding of the local financial landscape and to understand the regulatory environment. So for example, having a local account will make sure that you're compliant with your local laws and regulations. This is something that a lot of people don't think about. So for Verto, for example, some of the customers that we offer local collection accounts, what they're actually protecting themselves against things like local tax laws, regulations, and reporting requirements, because that's what obviously Verto ensure that in order for us to offer those solutions, we are compliant locally. So this especially is very important in countries with complex and constant tax laws that are also always changing, or even regulatory laws that are always changing. Another reason could be access to local funding or investment opportunities for someone like, let's say, Murat. So as this expanding to this market, and you wanted to, let's say, grow quickly, it might be looking for local funding. Obviously, a local investor will not want to be sending money to you across the border. So having a local solutions would be something that would be very useful for those companies. So in our case, we obviously bank some of these startups that are trading outside the local jurisdiction. Some of them are getting funding from US investors and so on. So we provide them with local accounts in USD that they can collect payment from in GBP in the UK and so on. So it makes it a lot easier for that investors to literally transfer the fund to them without any issue. Now, if I go outside just the typical solutions that maybe Verto provides, and think about a business in general, you want to have a better management of your local finance as well, because there's a lot of things that play into you collecting locally, from FX transaction risk, because in emerging markets in general, those currencies could be very volatile and illiquid at the same time. So you want to have a good management solution in place. And so a local account can help you better manage that. Also, you wanted to an extent, improve your stakeholders' communication. So again, if I use Murat as an example, is selling fish to Nigerian markets. The local buyers are not looking to be paying Murat in dollars or pounds or euros or any other currencies other than the local naira. So imagine a situation where that's not the case. So there's no way Murat is going to be able to actually scale that business successfully, where the buyers have to be looking for foreign currency to pay in. So it helps to improve that local stakeholders relationship and so on. And I'll say lastly, it's probably one of the best solutions for any global businesses to actually mitigate your financial risk. So financial risk can obviously stem from a lot of areas, but the key areas there is that if you're collecting locally, and if you have that currency in a situation where it's very volatile, like a currency in Africa and so on, using a platform like Verto means that you can actually convert that quickly into a stable currency that you have confidence in. And vice versa, like if you're running an operation locally, you shouldn't have to worry about, I need to convert my foreign currency to local account to pay for my employees or to pay for local operations. So it allows you to manage your risk a lot better. So in some way, the local accounts are very critical for businesses looking to efficiently run their local operations. They provide a deep understanding of local financial landscape, regulatory environment, allow you to be compliant with local tax law in some cases, and also it gives you access to local funding if that's what you're looking for, and it allows you to manage your stakeholders a lot better.
Thanks, Anthony. So, Olivier, as Anthony touched on, local accounts help, among many other things, mitigate FX risk. What other strategies would you recommend to mitigate FX risk in your global operations?
I think we already touched on emerging market, but I think in this case, I'm going to zero in on Africa. So if we look at it from an African context and think about treasury management, there's about 54 countries in Africa and about 42 currencies. So if you're in a business like Morat, or you're a fintech, or you're a SaaS business, and you're trying to expand into all of these countries, you have to have local collections in all these markets. So you can imagine an Amazon that's got a very aggressive Africa play at the moment to go into so many markets. It still needs to collect, whether that's the subscriptions for your Apple, for your Amazon TV, and all the payments for audio equivalent shopping. And it has to do it in all of these currencies and repatriate that back to the US eventually at some point. So it's not like the US where there's like so many states and just the dollar, or like Europe where you pretty much have to deal with GBP and the euro for the most part. It's quite a complex market from a collection standpoint. So mitigating the risk of collecting all of these currencies is actually a complicated process. So treasury management becomes super critical, both in terms of the speed of collecting those funds, but also converting those funds into your desired currency for repatriation, or even just for store of value. So ideally, you want to look for strong partners that understand that local market and also have good institutional relationships to ensure that, one, you're getting the best service possible, and two, you're protecting your business and hedging the risk of actually operating in quite volatile markets themselves. Ideally, as a treasury team, it goes without saying, you're going to carry out some level of FX risk assessment in terms of, for the markets you're operating in, just how volatile are they and what sort of positions you want to take within those markets. But just as important in this age of technology is actually thinking about how can you apply technology, automation, as a way to make that easier. So you can imagine, as I gave an example of Amazon, if you went into all of these 42 markets and had local accounts in all of these 42 markets, it would mean that someone in your treasury team is literally logging into about 42 different local accounts every day to understand their cash position. And ideally, where we come in is our ideal future is getting to a place where someone like Murat or any tech company or any SaaS company or Amazon or Microsoft can literally go into one solution and have access to as many local African currency accounts and be able to manage all of that through one platform and manage all of their holding positions, as well as any sort of repatriation that they'd like to do or conversions that they'd like to do as well. So I'll say those are sort of the key things you want to think about in terms of, I'll say, the FX risk and just how you manage that risk from both a sort of simple business, but also a bigger treasury standpoint. There are other things you can also look at as well. So things like sort of forwards, options, swaps, but I'll say those are sort of more complex products for more complex businesses, which we can also sort of explore as well.
Right. So in that case, Murat, Olivier emphasized the fact that one of the challenges of operating in Africa is managing several currencies at once. And one solution that's increasingly popular is multi-currency accounts. What would you consider best practice for managing such accounts in emerging markets like Africa?
Well, actually, I was recently inquiring with Verto if there is for a specific country, if they're planning to go. So the ideal case for a company like us would be Verto is in all of our destination markets, and we can control everything under one platform, on a one window. So at the moment, we have to manage each country through kind of a separate channel. So I'm looking forward to Verto extending its position, which will give us one window with several currencies, which we can at the bottom consolidate and move our or complete our financial transaction procedures or activities.
Great. And Olivier, would you have anything to add to that in terms of best practices around managing multi-currency accounts? You're on mute.
There we go. So I think Anthony already mentioned the importance of multi-currency account solutions. So at Verto, we offer just over 20 different currencies. That includes a basket of African currencies as well as the sort of G3 currencies as well. And that enables businesses to, as Moritz has sort of touched on, manage all of their sort of transaction requirements within one place. As I've mentioned, our ideal sort of vision is to get to a place where you're able to do that across a greater basket of African currencies. And so if you want to go into Zimbabwe or Angola or Ivory Coast or Congo, as opposed to going to find a local bank and sort of having sort of individual local bank relationships, you can actually do all of that through the Verto ecosystem. And that enables a business to massively streamline its processes, automate those processes as well, and really start to drive real growth for businesses, which is sort of the underlying things that businesses are trying to achieve.
Right. And on top of these multi-currency accounts, another trend that we're seeing in treasury management is the increasing use of APIs and automation to try and streamline the process as much as possible. So Anthony, what does the recent launch of the Verto API that you've been working on mean for global businesses in this era of treasury automation?
Yeah, and so Oscar, I think when it comes to API, to put it simply, this is like the most efficient way of managing your operation. To understand what cheaper is secured and so on. So Verto's API for us is a cloud-based treasury management solution. What it does is it offers customers the same services that we offer on our platform. So you're able to do collection using the API, you're able to do FX conversion in all the 50 currencies that we offer today. Most of them are streamlined and automated into real time, where as you convert your currency, you're getting the opposite currency. And at the back of that, you can actually make a payment as well. So imagine in a situation where you are collecting money in a local currency in a jurisdiction that is super volatile. As that money is landing to your wallet, you can actually convert that currency into a more stable currency straight away. Therefore, again, mitigating that risk or financial risk that I mentioned earlier, and I think Olivier mentioned the same thing. So also what it does is it helps with your treasury operation. So if I was to kind of like say, what are the potential benefit for an API like Verto for global businesses? What it does is it increases efficiency. The Verto API, it allows you to automate manual treasury processes, cash forecasting, FX trading, bank account management, and your payment processing. So you literally don't have to do that manually. If you imagine you're doing 200 payments a day, imagine how many people have to be doing that on a daily basis to make sure it's actually done correctly without having to do or introduce any human errors that, whether you like or not, is going to happen. So that will remove that risk of errors and delays. Security, as I mentioned, this API is built on advanced security protocols that protects any sensitive financial data and prevent fraud. And that fraud could be coming from online fraud to resource management or even employee fraud and so on. So API, again, is very, very secure when it comes to what it offers as a benefit. Also, it can actually help you improve your cash visibility. So going back to treasury conversation, when you have the API with Verto, given that your API is sitting on top of our multi-currency account and the wallet, and if you happen to link that to your ERP solutions or integrate it to your accounting solution, you can actually see where your cash is sitting in real time across those wallets. So that's another thing that it does. So you remove the need for you to be worried about where your cash balances are at end of day or the other treasury activities that you might not want to take today. I think most people, they tend to have like multiple banks and they have to wait for end of day balance or do a statement monthly to see where the balance is sitting. In that period, anything could have happened within the organization. So API allow you to see that in real time. More importantly, for companies that are, I would say, tech savvy or trying to grow at a ridiculous scale, API allow you to scale quickly. Like it is designed to scale within niche for businesses of all sizes. So we build this for small startup to SMEs to enterprises, where it doesn't matter where you're sitting in that value chain. Our API is built in that way and it's modular. So it's one of those solutions that you have to plug in every single solution we have now for you to be operational. You can pick and choose which of part of that solution you wanted, and that's basically what we offer. So in summary, the launch of our API, which was last year, represent an important step even for Verto when it comes to how we're trying to solve this cross-border problem, from treasury automation to FX conversion to global businesses running literally on one platform without the need to have to worry about risk management or worry about fraud and so on. And basically, by leveraging this capability, it means that as a business, you can just focus on what you do best. In case of Murat, you can focus on the logistics side and focus on expanding to those markets, getting new customers and so on. Verto almost becoming your banking partner in those local jurisdictions that you go to.
Right, and following up on that, Anthony, in terms of the API, what concerns do you often hear from customers when thinking about an API, whether it's right for them, and why perhaps might these concerns be unfounded?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of business have been around for years and they don't use API. So a business can be run on Excel, it can be run on paper and so on. But what happens in the past and still happen today is the efficiency is not there. There's certain activities that you might need 10, 20 people literally inputting data in order to reconcile an account. API offers you that sometimes in milliseconds, right? You can get real-time information. So some of the challenges or concerns that I've heard in the past is, this is going to be a lot of effort to integrate. No, that was in the past. API for Verto, it can be integrated within a day. You can make it within a week. It depends on the business, their appetite, and what they want to do. So that's something that can be done without any issues at all. Also, another concern is that this is expensive. Again, we offer this API freely because we want businesses to grow globally, to scale quickly. The services that we provide underneath is what's important. API is just another channel for you to do what you do on a platform without the need to do it manually. So most of the concerns around fees or whether it's expensive to run, integration, how long does it take? And obviously, is this something that would take a lot of people to manage? Again, no. If anything, it actually reduces your workforce. And in a way, you actually can focus on what's important in your business, actually bringing people that are actually adding value, controlling and so on, not people that are manually inputting stuff. Those people can be used elsewhere. So API offers a lot more benefit than I think the challenges that people think about. And for us today, we offer this for free. So whenever, say, a business is trying to use our API, we have a tech team that is dedicated to support them doing the integration to make sure that everything is done correctly.
Thanks, Anthony. I'd like to now reorient our discussion. Murat, you started using the solutions we offer at Verto about a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, and have been working with us since to improve our payment operations, your payment operations in Africa. As someone with more than 20 years of experience as an exporter focused on African markets, what are some pain points you often encounter in payments?
You mean the challenges or
pain points, difficulties that you often come across? Oh. For example, before using Verto, you had a process beforehand.
Yeah.
What issues did you have with that you don't have with
Verto? Now, the one thing is having a real-time controlling on the transactions is something critical, and having a local account at the destination market gives access to us that actually for everybody it becomes much easier when you are local. Without being local, actually this is on all businesses, without being local, it is it's very difficult to sustain. So the first step is, after you deliver your products or services, to collect locally the money is the key thing. Instead of waiting, now let's say, what is the option? Waiting in Norway at my bank account in Norway for the Norwegian krone to land, instead of, or compared to, collecting Nigerian naira in the country. This is a big value for the whole operation. You don't have to run after SWIFT messages if the money is transferred, if the money is not transferred, if the transaction between banks validates. If I can tell you full list. At the end, we are local just by the customer in their bank, actually, that they just do an inland transfer, and from there onwards, it's not their problem. They concentrate their own businesses. And we have having a solution provider, or actually a partner. That was what, as Anthony mentioned, it's here for us. Airline or the shipping company is a partner. The fisherman is a partner. The banks, the financial institution is a partner. And all these partners makes the value chain, and it becomes one product, actually. And each part has to perform. Now, if you have to wait for collection, or if payment becomes an issue, the chain is broken. And having a local account, it's a big comfort, I have to say. Yeah, it's a big comfort. It's an ease for everyone, and you don't have to deal with bank-to-bank internal transactions, SWIFT messages, and also the FX rate. You control it online, real time. That's also something critical. For our case, we either have to ask our clients to transfer the money in euro or dollar, and then in the country, in Norway, convert it to Norwegian krones, which is our main cost item. We pay to all the fisherman gets the money in Norwegian krones, not in euro. So we're not in Eurozone, we're not in US dollars. So Norwegian krones has its own volatility and limited room corridor. So bringing the foreign currency to Norway and then transferring it to, in a less competitive environment, to Norwegian krone versus being in an international platform in a more competitive FX environment, or more competitive conversion environment. We have also increased the return on the conversion rates. So we have more control on the FX rates together with Verto. So there's, at all level, we have experienced a positive impact on our business, which was a challenge before. Yeah.
Great. And so you emphasize that in the search for finding the right payment infrastructure, choosing the right partner is very important. So where did you start your search, and why did you end up choosing Verto? Murat. You're muted, Murat.
Line was not good. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. You were talking about how choosing the right partner is very important. And so I was wondering, where did you start your search, and why did you end up choosing Verto? What was it about Verto that stood out to you?
I started searching actually on Nigerian naira to international currencies. Where are the institutions which have been focusing? Because focus is important. To have as a side activity is one issue. Having a focus on an issue is critical. So I was looking for an institution who has focus on sub-Saharan Africa and also expertise in Nigerian naira. And there I have actually found out that Verto has this service, and we gave a try. And the team, I have to say, the team on the ground have been very supportive, very close collaboration. There has been challenges, but immediate response and understanding our questions, understanding our challenges, and finding solutions to that, and together with us. So I think those were very critical for us to decide. Yes, we concentrate with Verto, and we, as I said in my previous part in your question, that really I'm looking forward to having further growth of Verto, and it becomes also a role model, a case study in the industry. So there, in the future, more competition would, I think, only strengthen the company. So I'm very happy in cooperating and supporting. And there are challenges. There are still improvement rooms, which I see it is coming. So the team was also one of the key points for us to, after onboarding, to continue our presence and extended cooperation. Let me say. So not the technology only, huh? It's the team was important.
Glad to hear that. In that case, let's open it up to the audience, and I'll read through. Make sure to submit your questions in the Q&A, and I'll ask them to our presenters. In the meantime, I'd encourage everyone to read our product handbook that I've put in the handouts to get a better idea of the various different features that we offer, and which ones might be the most appropriate for your business. Okay, so the first question is there a trend in African payments most businesses are underestimating? Ovier.
That's an interesting question. I wouldn't say most businesses are underestimating. I will say that is still underutilized and has a lot of potential. So as most of our audience would probably know, probably Kenya is after China, is one of the biggest markets for mobile wallets. But that is a trend that is growing across Africa. In addition to that, there are loads of local efforts, or should I say continental efforts, to actually just streamline a lot of the payment and settlement infrastructure as well. So we've currently got the PAPS initiative, which is focused on sort of payments and settlement between African countries. You've got that within the South African region, as well as the East African region as well. All of that will help to enable better integration of local payments across all of those markets, on the one hand. On the other hand, there is the ability to, one, collect payments at that individual level. Two, there is the possibility for us to have greater level of access for all of those users as well. So if you imagine you are a business that's in Nigeria at the moment, you have a bank account with one of the local banks. Recently, there has been an open banking initiative in Nigeria. Typically, we'd have to go through loads of effort to onboard that Nigerian business, but we will get to a place where, because that Nigerian business has already been onboarded into the financial system, it's easier for us to access that data to onboard that customer, and it's easier for even a global company to also access that data to onboard that customer or offer that customer services as well. So a lot of the sort of local individuals as well as businesses will have greater access to financial services just as a result of that greater integration that's happening both at the mobile wallet level, but also happening at the regional level, which starts to actually greater visibility of what the potential is, both for the individual and also for the business.
Interesting. I'll I'll jump onto, I think the next question will be most fit for Anthony. So I run a startup in Nigeria. I'm not a European exporter like Munat. My main concern is getting the dollars I need. What does Verto do for startups in Africa?
That's a very good question. And this is actually one of the use cases that we have been solving for a lot of customers today. Some of them obviously sit around the fintech ecosystem. So if you're a business in Nigeria, and I'm going to presume that you are trading outside the country, therefore you need to collect from outside the country back into Nigeria, the same solution that we offer someone like Murat is similar to what we can offer you. So there are situations where, based on the type of business that you are and your jurisdiction, we are able to offer you local collection outside Nigeria as well. So we can offer you a USD collection account, a GBP, a Euro, and also multi-currency collection accounts. So multi-currency being in about, I think, 20 or so currencies that we can add on top of that 3 local currencies that we already mentioned. So the ability for you to collect money outside the country is something that we want to make sure that is very, very easy for any businesses anywhere around the world. So you shouldn't have to worry about having to have a local entity for you to do that. And also, if your part of your use case is you have local NGN that you are kind of receiving from your customers in Nigeria, but you need to pay out to your vendors or suppliers that are sitting outside the country, you need to pay for your AWS, cloud services, and so on, or Google. Again, this is where Verto comes in. We can give you that cross-border solution where you convert your engine into foreign currencies and make that payment. And very soon, we're going to launch our card solution that once we launch that for the African customers as well, it means that you actually can just pay using your card. So this is a multi-currency card that is sitting on top of our wallet. It basically means that you shouldn't have to worry about, again, having to convert currency, liquidity, and so on. You can just make payments in USD, pounds, or Euro, and Verto will do the rest for you. We collect your local currency and convert for you at a rate that is way better than what you get from your bank or banking partners locally, and so on. So the solution works for both sides, and that's why I think we're very positioned in the market, where we are the only companies today that literally trying to solve both sides of the market. We're not trying to just remit into the country like most of our companies. Our solution is we want to enable both sides of the trade to be frictionless and seamless.
Great. Anthony, asking you the same question that I asked OVA, are there any trends that you'd like to touch on that we haven't talked about yet in African payments that most businesses are perhaps underestimating?
Yeah, I mean, the one of the potential trends that I think a lot of people are excited about, but I still find it difficult to understand the usefulness of it, is buy now, pay later. And the reason is Africa, for me, is a country that is run on debit, like people spend their cash or their money. There is not enough what I call credit operating system where people can trust. So the idea of credit is not something that is usually used. But when you think about business that's actually obviously trying to scale, a lot of businesses, they are used to either getting some form of credit from family and friends or local banks and so on to run the business. So being able to integrate a buy now, pay later solution for businesses, I think is something that can allow that business to scale. So I'm not talking about business that's offering to the consumer side. I'm talking about businesses that are using that solution to maybe pay for their own supplies and so on, without having to worry about the cash flow coming in quickly and not losing that inventory. So it's a trend I think will definitely play really well on the business side, and maybe in a few years more on the consumer side. And consumer being that, can you actually collect your money back? I think that's the key element. You can loan money out, can you collect it back efficiently without the constant use of I would say the old school method that people use today, which is not compliant when it comes to how you collect money from consumers. That's one trend I've seen. The other trend that I think can really, really scale, and obviously it's been used a lot in Africa today, is blockchain, cryptocurrency, which again, when you think about the monetary solution on the continent, the liquid currencies, the lack of solutions means that cryptocurrencies potentially are the solution. But I'll probably sit on the CBDC side, the central bank's currency, because again, when you start using cryptocurrency to make transactions, and we all know it could be very, very volatile. That's not a good business solution in my view, especially if you're paying somebody or you're collecting money within that second or period, you could be losing or making money, and that's not transaction anymore. That is speculation and trading. But on the CBD side or stable coin, that for me could be a game changer, and it's already a game changer already, where a lot of businesses are utilizing that today. So that's a trend that I would see that it will continue this year and the year to come. And lastly, obviously, AI is everywhere today. AI this, AI that. My argument is, yes, AI is awesome for a lot of products, but it's awesome when you have data, because otherwise, like especially the generative AI, like if you have no data, your AI is as good as a chatbot, right? So I would say that's a trend that we're going to see this year. But how effective are those AI? I don't know. I have to see those use cases and how they're going to be implemented.
Great, thanks, Anthony. We've unfortunately run out of time for questions. Nonetheless, if you're hungry for more insights into African international payments or how you can streamline your treasury function, I'd encourage you to go check out our website, where we regularly post articles on topics ranging from e-commerce in Africa to how exporters should be thinking about payments. You can also take a look at our recently launched podcast, Forex in 5, which has received great positive feedback. That delves into specific trends in African FX, like the impact of South Africa being added to the FATF grey list, or the effect of the Nigerian cash crunch on markets. Make sure to fill in our feedback form once the event is over to help us provide the best quality content for you, and to take a look at our product handbook. I'd like to thank our amazing panelists for joining us today, as well as our great attendees. It was a pleasure to have you all with us today. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you enjoyed the event.
Thank you, Oscar.
My pleasure. Thanks, Oscar.
Thank you, Oscar, for the coordination.